The sharp click of my heels against the marble floor had become my metronome, the rhythm that measured out my days in Carlos Benedetti's world. Each step echoed through the 42nd floor of the Benedetti Tower, a sound so familiar I barely registered it anymore. But today, something felt different. The air itself seemed heavier, charged with an electricity I couldn't name. I adjusted the stack of contracts in my arms, my fingers brushing against the smooth leather portfolio that cost more than my first car. 6 months as Carlos Benedetti's executive secretary, and I still wasn't used to the casual displays of wealth that surrounded me. The office suite was all dark wood and Italian marble, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city sprawling 42 stories below. From up here, the world looked small, manageable, as if Carlos could reach out and rearrange it to his liking, which I suppose he could. The scent of his cologne lingered in the hallway, expensive and woody with notes of bergamot and something darker I could never quite identify. It clung to everything, a constant reminder of his presence even when he wasn't physically there. I'd learned to associate that scent with danger and power, with the way his dark eyes could strip away pretense and see straight through to the truth you were trying to hide. My phone buzzed in my jacket pocket for the 3rd time in an hour. I didn't need to look to know it was Ethan, the divorce lawyer who'd become my lifeline over the past 2 months, helping me navigate the nightmare of leaving Marcus. My husband. Ex-husband. I corrected myself mentally, though the papers weren't signed yet. The man who'd spent 3 years teaching me that love could be a prison with invisible bars. I should have answered. Ethan only called during work hours when it was urgent, but Carlos had been in back-to-back meetings all morning, and I knew he'd be emerging from the conference room any moment now, expecting his coffee exactly the way he liked it. Black with a single sugar cube dissolved completely, no trace of sweetness on the tongue, just the ghost of it in the finish. The conference room doors opened, and my breath caught the way it always did when I saw him. Carlos Benedetti moved like a predator, all controlled grace and barely contained power. At 38, he was devastatingly handsome in a way that felt dangerous, like admiring a wolf. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, sharp cheekbones and a jaw that looked like it could cut glass. But it was his eyes that held you captive, nearly black in most lights, capable of expressing everything or nothing depending on his mood. Today, those eyes were stormy. Diana. His voice was a low rumble, accented with the remnants of his Italian heritage, though he'd been born in New York. My office. Now. Not a request. Never a request with Carlos. I followed him across the expansive lobby area, past my desk with its organized chaos of files and sticky notes, into his private office. The space was quintessentially him. Minimalist but expensive. Every piece of furniture chosen for both form and function. A massive desk dominated the room, its surface clear except for 2 computer monitors and a single photograph in a silver frame. His mother, gone 5 years now. He moved to stand behind his desk but didn't sit, which meant this wasn't going to be a long conversation. His posture was rigid, tension evident in the set of his shoulders beneath the perfectly tailored charcoal suit. I'd learned to read these small signals over the past months, the way you might learn to predict a storm by watching the sky. "The Patterson contract," he said, his eyes never leaving my face. "You made changes to the terms." My stomach dropped. I had made changes, small ones, clauses that protected some of the workers who would be affected by the merger. Changes Carlos hadn't authorized. Changes that were, technically, outside my authority as his secretary. I did. I lifted my chin, refusing to show the fear that coiled in my belly. This was one thing Marcus had taught me, inadvertently, how to stand my ground even when every instinct screamed to run. The original terms would have left 200 families without health insurance during the transition period. I added a protection clause. You added. His voice was dangerously soft now, the tone that made grown men nervous. You presumed to alter a multi-million-dollar contract without consulting me. Yes. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. I met his gaze steadily, even though my heart was hammering against my ribs. And because I knew you'd agree if you'd had time to review it properly. You were in Singapore when the deadline hit. Something flickered in those dark eyes, too quick to identify. For a long moment, he said nothing, just studied me with an intensity that made my skin prickle with awareness. Then, unexpectedly, his mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. You're either very brave or very foolish, Diana. Probably both, I admitted. The Pattersons accepted the revised terms. They were impressed by the humanity of it. He moved around the desk, coming to lean against its edge, close enough that I could smell his cologne properly now, could see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw despite the early hour. You made me look good. That's my job. No. His voice dropped lower, intimate in a way that sent heat curling through my stomach. Your job is to follow my instructions. What you did was think like a partner, not a secretary. There's a difference. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing, just held his gaze and tried to ignore the way my body responded to his proximity. This had been happening more frequently over the past weeks, these moments of crackling tension between us, where the air itself seemed to vibrate with something unspoken. Your phone's been buzzing all morning. He said it casually, but there was something sharp beneath the words. Important call? Just personal matters. I kept my voice neutral. Nothing urgent. Diana. He said my name like a caress and a warning all at once. I don't pry into my employees' personal lives as a rule, but when that personal life might affect their work, it becomes my concern. Is there something I should know? Yes, I wanted to say. I'm leaving my husband. The man who put his fist through the wall beside my head when I asked about the charges on our credit card. The man who isolated me from my friends and family so slowly, I didn't realize I was alone until it was almost too late. The man who has connections to the Caruso family, your biggest rivals in this city. But I couldn't say any of that. Not to Carlos Benedetti, who controlled half the underground economy of New York and whose business empire was built on loyalty and trust. My divorce wasn't just messy. It was dangerous. Marcus's family might be legitimate on paper, but everyone knew the Carusos had their hands in everything from construction to pharmaceuticals. If Carlos knew about my connection to them, even by marriage, would he see me as a liability? Everything's fine, I lied, and hated how easily the words came. Marcus had taught me that too, how to lie with a smile. Carlos's eyes narrowed fractionally. He didn't believe me, that much was clear. But before he could push further, his desk phone rang, the private line that only a handful of people had access to. We'll continue this later, he said, moving to answer it. And Diana, next time you decide to revise a contract on my behalf, at least have the courtesy to leave me a note. Yes, sir. I turned to leave, relief flooding through me at the reprieve. My hand was on the doorknob when his voice stopped me. One more thing. You left your personal phone on your desk. I froze, cold dread replacing the relief. My phone. I'd been so focused on bringing Carlos his coffee and the contracts that I'd left my phone on my desk, unlocked, because I'd been checking Ethan's last message when Carlos had called me into his office. I started to say, but he was already moving past me, striding out of his office toward my desk, with that predatory grace that made my pulse spike. I followed, my heels clicking frantically against the marble now, but I was too late. Carlos was already standing at my desk, my phone in his hand, his thumb scrolling through my messages with Ethan. With each scroll, his expression grew darker, more dangerous, until it felt like the temperature in the room had dropped 10 degrees. Who? He said, his voice perfectly controlled in the way that meant he was furious. Is Ethan Mitchell? My mouth went dry. On the screen, I could see the last message Ethan had sent. Meeting with Marcus's lawyer this afternoon. Stay strong. This will be over soon. And above it, my response from this morning. I'm scared. He's threatening to make this ugly. Says he'll destroy me if I go through with it. He's my divorce lawyer, I said, forcing the words past the constriction in my throat. Carlos's head snapped up, those dark eyes boring into mine with an intensity that made me take an involuntary step back. You're married. Separated. Soon to be divorced. How soon? I filed 2 months ago. We're negotiating terms. He set the phone down with deliberate care, but I could see his knuckles were white where they gripped the edge of my desk. 2 months. You've worked for me for 6 months, which means you've been married this entire time and neglected to mention it. It didn't seem relevant. He cut himself off, jaw clenching. Diana, I do background checks on everyone who works for me. Thorough ones. How did this not come up? I use my maiden name professionally. Always have. Marcus and I kept our finances completely separate. We lived in his apartment, not mine. On paper, there's nothing connecting us, except a marriage license. Filed in New Jersey under his legal name, Marcus Caruso. I watched his face, saw the moment the name registered, saw his expression shift from anger to something colder, more calculating. Caruso. He said the name like a curse. You're married to a Caruso. In name only. I haven't lived with him in 3 months. I've been staying with my sister while the divorce is finalized. Does he know you work for me? The question sent ice through my veins because I'd been asking myself the same thing for weeks now. Marcus had been getting increasingly aggressive in his efforts to contact me, showing up at places he shouldn't know about, making threats that felt too specific to be just rage and wounded pride. I don't know, I admitted. I've been careful, but the Carusos have eyes everywhere. Carlos finished my thought, his mind already racing ahead to implications and threats I hadn't fully considered. He pulled out his own phone, typing rapidly. How threatening has he been? It's just talk. Angry texts, voicemails. He's never actually... Has he ever hit you? The question, asked in that flat, dangerous tone, made something crack in my chest. I'd never told anyone the truth, not even Ethan, who'd asked carefully casual questions while reviewing my case. Everyone assumed I was leaving Marcus because the marriage had simply failed, not because I was afraid. No, I said, and it was technically true. Marcus had never actually struck me. He'd just made sure I knew he could, that the threat was always there in his clenched fists, and the way he'd slam doors, throw things, punch walls so close to my head that I'd feel the displacement of air against my face. Carlos's eyes said he knew I was lying, or at least not telling the whole truth. He moved closer, and I fought the urge to back away, to show weakness. I'd learned with Marcus that showing fear only made things worse. Look at me, Diana. I did, lifting my chin in defiance even as my hands trembled at my sides. If Marcus Caruso has threatened you, if he's made you feel unsafe in any way, I need to know. Right now. Why? The question escaped before I could stop it. So you can fire me? Eliminate the liability before it becomes a problem? I know how this works, Mr. Benedetti. I'm a risk now, a connection to your enemies. Stop. His hand shot out, not grabbing me, but close enough that I could feel the heat of his palm near my arm. You think I'd fire you? Throw you back to a man who makes you check over your shoulder every time you leave this building? Who makes you keep your phone face down on your desk like you're afraid of what might show up on the screen? I stared at him, shocked into silence. I notice things, Diana. It's how I've stayed alive in this business. And I've noticed that you flinch when men raise their voices. that you position yourself near exits in every room, that you never talk about your personal life even though the other secretaries gossip constantly. His voice softened fractionally. I've noticed you're afraid, and I've been waiting for you to trust me enough to tell me why. You're my boss, I whispered, not my protector. I'm both. The certainty in his voice was absolute. Everyone who works for me is under my protection. That's how this works. And now that I know what you're dealing with, that protection extends to getting you safely away from Marcus Caruso. Consequences be damned. He'll retaliate. The Carusos don't like being challenged. Let them try. There was steel beneath the words now, the reminder that Carlos Benedetti hadn't built his empire by backing down from threats. You're mine now, Diana. My employee. My responsibility. And I protect what's mine. The possessiveness in those words should have frightened me. It reminded me too much of Marcus, of the way he'd claimed ownership of me like I was property to be controlled. But somehow, from Carlos's lips, it felt different. Not like a cage, but like armor. The rest of that day passed in a strange haze. Carlos disappeared into his office for hours, making calls in rapid Italian that I couldn't follow through the thick door. I tried to work, to focus on the endless stream of emails and scheduling requests that comprised my normal duties. But my mind kept circling back to the way he'd said mine, the way it had made me feel both trapped and safe simultaneously. My phone buzzed again. Ethan, for the 5th time since Carlos had seen our messages. Diana, I need to talk to you about the hearing next week. Marcus's lawyer is pushing for a continuance, claiming you haven't been forthcoming about your current financial situation. Please call me back. I stared at the message, dread pooling in my stomach. My current financial situation. That was code for, where are you working and how much are you making? Information I deliberately kept vague in all our filings. If Marcus found out I worked for Carlos Benedetti, the divorce would become a war. The Carusos would use it as leverage, as ammunition, as proof that I'd been planning this all along, that I was some kind of corporate spy. The irony was, I hadn't known who Carlos was when I'd applied for the position. I'd seen Executive Secretary, Benedetti Enterprises, and focused only on the salary, which was triple what I'd been making at the law firm where Marcus had insisted I work. A law firm run by his cousin, where every move I made was monitored and reported back to him. It was only after I'd been hired, after I'd spent my first day learning the intricate details of Carlos's legitimate business operations, that I'd understood, the way people spoke his name in hushed, respectful tones, the security measures that went beyond what any normal company required, the meetings that weren't listed on any calendar, with men whose expensive suits couldn't quite hide the violence in their eyes. By then, I'd already fallen in love with the job. The challenge of it, the way Carlos demanded perfection but rewarded competence. The way he treated me like I had a brain, asking my opinion on deals and strategies, actually listening when I offered suggestions. After 3 years of Marcus treating me like an ornament to be displayed and controlled, Carlos's respect had been intoxicating. I'd convinced myself I could keep the two worlds separate, that Marcus would never find out where I worked, that I could get the divorce finalized and disappear before anyone connected the dots. Foolish, in retrospect. In Carlos's world, secrets didn't stay buried for long. Diana. His voice from the doorway made me jump, my hand flying to my chest. He'd moved so silently I hadn't heard him approach. Come with me. Where? Just come. I followed him to the private elevator, the one that required a key card and retinal scan to operate. I'd never been in it before. As the doors slid shut, enclosing us in the small space, I became acutely aware of his presence. The way his cologne filled my senses, the heat radiating from his body despite the foot of space between us. The elevator descended, but not to the lobby. It kept going, down past the parking garage, into what I realized must be sublevels that didn't appear on any building directory. Carlos, Where are we? I want you to understand something, he interrupted, his voice low and controlled. I want you to see exactly what resources I have at my disposal, what I'm willing to use to protect you. The doors opened onto a corridor that looked nothing like the upstairs offices. This was concrete and steel, functional and cold, with security cameras at every junction and doors that required biometric scans to open. Carlos led me through a maze of passages until we reached a room that looked like something out of a spy movie. Banks of monitors covered one wall, each displaying different camera feeds from around the city. 2 men in tactical gear sat at workstations, barely glancing up as we entered. A third man, older with silver-streaked hair, rose from a leather chair in the corner. Diana, this is Vincent. He runs security for all my operations. Carlos's hand settled on the small of my back, proprietary and warm through the thin fabric of my blouse. Vincent, I need everything on Marcus Caruso. Current location, known associates, patterns of movement. I want to know where he is at all times. Vincent's eyes flicked to me with professional assessment. How deep do you want me to go? All the way. Financial records, communications, everything. If he's been following her, I want to know when it started and how he knew where to find her. My blood ran cold. You think he's been following me? I think, Carlos said carefully, turning me to face him, his hands on my shoulders. That Marcus Caruso is a controlling bastard who doesn't like losing things he considers his property, and I think he's been keeping tabs on you since you left him. But I've been careful. I haven't seen Vincent. Show her. Vincent tapped a few keys, and suddenly one of the monitors displayed what looked like traffic camera footage from 3 days ago. I watched myself leaving the building, heading toward the subway station I used for my commute. And there, half a block behind me, barely visible in the crowd, was Marcus. My stomach turned to ice. How long? I whispered. At least a month, based on what we've found so far. Vincent's voice was matter-of-fact, clinical. He's been careful, keeping his distance, using different routes. But he's watching you, Ms. Hernandez. Regularly. The room tilted slightly. A month. Marcus had been following me for a month and I hadn't noticed. All my careful precautions, my hypervigilance, and I'd never seen him. Why didn't you tell me? I turned on Carlos, anger replacing the fear. If you knew he was following me. I didn't know until this afternoon. The moment you told me about him, I had Vincent pull footage from all the cameras near this building. His hands tightened on my shoulders. I'm telling you now so you understand that you can't go back to your sister's place. It's not safe anymore. If Marcus knows where you work, he knows where you're staying. I can't just... Where am I supposed to go? Home with me. The words hung in the air between us, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to examine. That's not appropriate. You're my boss. I can't... Appropriate went out the window when I saw that your estranged husband has been stalking you for weeks. His voice hardened. You have 2 choices, Diana. You can come home with me to my penthouse, where I have security that actually works. Or I can have Vincent assign a full detail to watch your sister's apartment 24/7. Either way, you're under protection now. You don't get to refuse. You can't just... I can, and I am. He released my shoulders, stepping back, giving me space to breathe. I understand this is overwhelming. I understand you don't know me well enough to trust me completely. But right now, you need to prioritize your safety over your discomfort with the situation. I wanted to argue, to insist I could handle this myself, that I didn't need a man swooping in to save me. But the image of Marcus on that screen, following me, watching me, made my skin crawl. How many times had he been close enough to touch me without me knowing? How long before he decided following wasn't enough? What about work? My voice came out smaller than I intended. If I'm staying with you, People will talk. Let them talk. Carlos's jaw set in that stubborn line I'd learned to recognize. Your safety matters more than office gossip. Besides, half the building already thinks we're sleeping together. My head snapped up. What? Diana, we work closely together. You're in my office more than anyone else. I take your advice on major decisions. People make assumptions. He shrugged, unconcerned. I've never bothered to correct them because, frankly, it's none of their business. Heat crept up my neck. I'd been oblivious, focused so intently on keeping my head down and doing my job well that I'd never noticed the speculation. Or maybe I had noticed and chosen to ignore it, afraid that acknowledging the chemistry between Carlos and me would make it real, would force me to confront the way my pulse jumped every time he was near. There's one more thing you should see, Vincent said, drawing our attention back to the monitors. He pulled up a different set of footage, this one from inside what looked like a restaurant. This was taken last night. I watched Marcus sit down across from a man I didn't recognize. They spoke for several minutes before a woman joined them, elegant in a burgundy dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She was beautiful in that polished, expensive way that spoke of professional stylists and personal trainers. And the way she touched Marcus's arm, leaned in close to whisper in his ear, made it clear they were more than acquaintances. Who is she? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. Sofia Marino, Vincent answered. Daughter of Antonio Marino, who runs the dockworkers union. She's also, according to our intelligence, Marcus's current girlfriend. The revelation should have hurt, should have made me feel betrayed or jealous. Instead, I felt nothing but a distant sense of vindication. Marcus was seeing someone else, which meant his obsessive need to prevent our divorce had nothing to do with wanting me back, and everything to do with control and pride. The man they're meeting with is Leo Santoro, Carlos said, his voice tight with something I couldn't identify. He's a lawyer, but not the divorce kind. He specializes in corporate espionage and blackmail. My stomach dropped. What would Marcus need with someone like that? That's what I intend to find out. Carlos turned to Vincent. I want ears on all of them. Every conversation, every meeting. If they're planning something, I want to know about it before they make a move. Already on it, boss. Carlos took my elbow, guiding me back toward the elevator. I went numbly, my mind trying to process everything I'd just learned. Marcus had been following me. Marcus was planning something with a lawyer who specialized in destroying people. And worst of all, I'd brought this threat directly into Carlos's world by accepting this job, by being too naive to realize the danger I was putting him in. Stop, Carlos said as the elevator began its ascent. I can practically hear you spiraling from here. You should fire me. The words burst out before I could stop them. This is going to blow up in your face. Marcus will use me against you, against your business. He'll try. Carlos's voice was calm, certain. And he'll fail. Diana, I've dealt with men far more dangerous than Marcus Caruso. He's a spoiled trust fund brat playing at being dangerous because his family name opens doors. He doesn't frighten me. He should. The Carusos are aware that I could dismantle their entire operation if I chose to. We have an understanding, the Carusos and I. We don't interfere in each other's business. But if Marcus comes at me through you, if he makes this personal, that understanding becomes void. The elevator doors opened back onto the executive floor. Carlos didn't immediately exit, instead, turning to face me fully. In the close confines, I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes, aware of how much larger he was, how easily he could hurt me if he wanted to. But I wasn't afraid. Not of Carlos. Pack a bag tonight, he said softly. Enough for a week. Vincent will pick you up from your sister's at 7 tomorrow morning and bring you directly to my place. I'll have my housekeeper prepare a room for you. Carlos, this isn't a request, Diana. And it's not about me wanting to control you or own you or any of the things I'm sure you're afraid of after Marcus. His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone in a gesture so tender it made my breath catch. This is about keeping you alive. Can you trust me enough for that? Could I? Trust had been beaten out of me systematically over 3 years of marriage, replaced with hypervigilance and suspicion. But standing there, looking into Carlos Benedetti's dark eyes, feeling the warmth of his palm against my face, I found myself nodding. Okay, I whispered. 1 week. We'll start with 1 week, he agreed, and see where we go from there. Carlos's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building in Tribeca, the kind of address that didn't advertise itself, but spoke volumes to those who knew. Vincent had picked me up at exactly 7 a.m. as promised, his professional demeanor making the surreal situation feel almost normal, as if being escorted to your boss's home with a duffel bag of belongings was just another Tuesday morning. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse, and I stepped into a space that was somehow exactly what I'd expected, and nothing like it at the same time. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Manhattan, the morning sun painting the cityscape in shades of gold and amber. The decor was minimalist but warm, all dark wood and leather with strategic pops of color from what I suspected were original artworks. Ms. Hernandez. A woman in her 60s appeared from what looked like the kitchen, her silver hair pulled into an elegant chignon. I'm Teresa, Mr. Benedetti's housekeeper. He asked me to show you to your room. Your room. The words should have been reassuring, confirmation that this was purely about security, about keeping me safe. Instead, they felt like a line being drawn, a boundary being established. This was temporary, professional, nothing more. Teresa led me down a hallway lined with photographs I didn't have time to examine closely, though I caught glimpses of a younger Carlos, with an elegant woman who had to be his mother, his arm around her shoulders, both of them laughing at something outside the frame. It was the first time I'd seen him look truly carefree. This is the guest suite, Teresa said, opening a door to reveal a bedroom that was easily twice the size of the room I rented at my sister's apartment. A king-sized bed dominated the space, dressed in linens that looked impossibly soft. French doors led to a private balcony, and another door presumably opened to the ensuite bathroom. Mr. Benedetti wanted me to tell you that you're welcome to anything in the kitchen. The gym is on the lower level, and his office is off-limits unless he specifically invites you in. Thank you, Teresa. She studied me for a moment, her dark eyes kind but assessing. He's a good man, Ms. Hernandez. Not always a kind one, but a good one. You're safe here. After she left, I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to process what my life had become. 3 days ago, I'd been focused on finalizing my divorce, on rebuilding some semblance of normalcy. Now I was living in my boss's penthouse because my estranged husband had been stalking me for weeks and was apparently plotting something with a lawyer who specialized in destroying people's lives. My phone buzzed. Ethan, again. Diana, where are you? I went to your sister's apartment this morning and she said you'd moved out. We have the hearing in 4 days. I need to know how to reach you. I typed back quickly. Staying with a friend. I'm safe. What do we need to prep for the hearing? His response came immediately. We need to talk about Marcus's latest filing. He's claiming marital assets include your current income. Call me, now. My current income. That's what this was about. Marcus had somehow found out about my salary, about the fact that I was making more money than I ever had in my life, and now he wanted a piece of it. The irony was bitter. He'd spent years controlling my finances, forcing me to ask permission for every purchase, questioning every expense. And now that I'd finally escaped, he wanted to claim I owed him. Bad news? I jumped, my phone clattering to the hardwood floor. Carlos stood in the doorway, changed from this morning's suit into dark jeans and a black Henley that somehow made him look more dangerous than the expensive tailoring did. His hair was slightly damp, as if he'd just showered, and without the armor of his business attire, he looked younger, more approachable. My divorce lawyer, I said, bending to retrieve my phone. Apparently Marcus is trying to claim my salary as a marital asset. Carlos's jaw tightened. He has no legal standing for that. You've been separated for months, and New York is an equitable distribution state. Income earned after separation isn't considered marital property. I stared at him. How do you know that? I'm not just a pretty face, Diana. His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. I own several legitimate businesses, which means I've had to educate myself on corporate law, family law, employment law, all of it. Knowledge is power in any world. He moved into the room, and I forced myself not to back away, not to show the instinctive wariness that Marcus had trained into me. Carlos wasn't Marcus. I had to keep reminding myself of that. Your lawyer is right, though. You do need to talk to him, and you need to decide how you want to handle the hearing. He sat in the armchair by the window, deliberately putting space between us. What does Marcus want? Besides to make my life hell? I'm not sure anymore. I sank back onto the bed, exhaustion suddenly overwhelming me. At first, I thought he just couldn't stand the idea of me leaving. He's always been possessive, controlling. But now with Sophia, with this lawyer he's meeting with, I think it's something else, something bigger. Tell me about him, Carlos said. Not the man who followed you or filed spurious legal claims. Tell me about the man you married. Help me understand what we're really dealing with. I didn't want to. Talking about Marcus, about those early days when I'd been naive enough to think his jealousy was flattering, his need to know where I was every moment was caring, felt like reopening a wound that had barely begun to heal. But Carlos was right. If he was going to help me, he needed to understand the enemy. I met Marcus at a charity gala, I began, the words coming slowly at first, then faster as the memories surfaced. I was there as someone's plus one, feeling completely out of place in a borrowed dress. He was charming, attentive, made me feel like I was the only person in the room. We dated for 6 months before he proposed, and it was a fairy tale. He took me to Paris, to Barcelona, bought me jewelry I couldn't even pronounce the names of. I thought I'd won the lottery. When did it change? The wedding night. The admission tasted like ash. We were at the hotel, and I wanted to call my mother, let her know we'd arrived safely. Marcus said no, that this was our time, that I needed to stop being so dependent on my family. It seemed reasonable at the time, even sweet. He wanted me all to himself. Carlos's expression had gone very still, very cold, but it wasn't sweet. No, it was the first step. Over the next few months, he'd find reasons I shouldn't see my friends. They were bad influences, or they didn't really care about me, or spending time with them made him feel neglected. My mother called too much. My sister was too demanding. One by one, he cut me off from everyone I cared about until the only person left in my world was him. And you didn't realize what was happening. I realized. The confession hurt. But by the time I understood what he'd done, I was so isolated, so convinced that I was the problem, that I didn't know how to get out. He never hit me, so I told myself it wasn't abuse. He just loved me too much, needed me too much. I could handle it. Diana, I know how it sounds. I know I should have left sooner, should have been stronger. But Marcus is good at what he does. He knows exactly how to make you doubt yourself, how to twist reality until you're not sure what's true anymore. I met Carlos's eyes, needing him to understand. The night I finally left, I'd been planning it for weeks. I'd opened a secret bank account, saved every dollar I could hide. I had a bag packed and hidden at my sister's house. I was ready. What happened? He came home early from a business trip, found me looking at apartments on my laptop. He didn't yell, didn't threaten. He just closed the laptop very carefully and said, You know I'll never let you go, right? You're mine, Diana. You'll always be mine. And the way he said it, so calm, so certain. I shivered, remembering the cold terror that had gripped me. I knew he meant it. That if I didn't leave right then, I never would. Carlos rose from the chair, crossed to the bed, and sat beside me. Not touching, but close enough that I could feel his warmth, his solid presence. So, you ran. I grabbed my purse and I ran. Made it to my sister's apartment, called Ethan the next day. Filed for divorce the day after that. I laughed, but it came out broken. Marcus called me 37 times in the first 24 hours. Left voicemails saying he loved me, that he was sorry, that we could work it out. Then the messages changed. Started saying I was making a mistake, that I'd regret leaving him, that I'd never find anyone who loved me the way he did. Loved. Carlos's voice was flat. That's not love, Diana. That's obsession. That's ownership. I know that now, but it took me 3 years to figure it out, and by then, I'd already lost so much of myself. I looked down at my hands, at the faint scar on my left ring finger where I'd torn off my wedding band in my haste to remove it. When I took the job with you, it was supposed to be a fresh start, a place where Marcus couldn't reach me, where I could be someone other than his wife. I should have known it wouldn't be that simple. Nothing worth having is ever simple. Carlos's hand found mine, his fingers curling around my palm with surprising gentleness. I need you to understand something, Diana. What I'm offering you isn't just security until your divorce is final. It's protection for as long as you need it. Marcus doesn't get to terrorize you. He doesn't get to make you afraid. Not anymore. But why? The question burst out of me. Why do you care? I'm just your secretary. This isn't your problem. You stopped being just my secretary the moment you revised the Patterson contract without asking permission, he said, his dark eyes intense. You became someone who thinks, who acts, who sees beyond her own interests to what's right. That's rare in my world, Diana. That's valuable. And valuable things need to be protected. I'm not a thing to be protected, I argued, even as part of me wanted to lean into the safety he was offering. I'm not something you own. No. His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand, the touch sending sparks up my arm. You're not. But you are someone I care about, someone I'm choosing to invest in. And before you argue that it's too fast or inappropriate or any of the other excuses you're formulating, understand that time is irrelevant. I know what I want, and I'm not in the habit of second-guessing myself. And what do you want? The question hung between us, loaded with implications I wasn't sure I was ready for. Carlos studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable, before answering. I want you safe. I want Marcus Caruso neutralized as a threat. I want you to stop looking over your shoulder every time you leave a room. He paused, then added in a voice that sent heat curling through my stomach. And I want you to stay, Diana. Not just until the divorce is final, but after. I want you in my home, in my business, in my life. Does that frighten you? Yes, I whispered. It terrifies me. Good. His smile was sharp, dangerous. Fear means you're paying attention. Fear means you understand exactly what you're getting into. I'm not a good man, Diana. I'm not Marcus, but I'm not some white knight either. My world is dark and violent and complicated. But I promise you this. I will never lie to you. Never manipulate you. Never make you doubt your own reality. You'll always know exactly where you stand with me. And where do I stand? Right now, you stand at a crossroads. You can let me help you. Really help you. Which means trusting me with everything. Every detail about Marcus. Every fear. Every secret. Or you can insist on handling this yourself, in which case I'll respect your choice, but I won't stand by and watch you get hurt. Choose, Diana. I looked at our joined hands, at the way his fingers dwarfed mine, strong and capable, and somehow not threatening at all. I thought about Marcus's hands, how they'd never been gentle, always demanding, always taking. And I thought about the past 3 years, about the woman I'd been before Marcus, confident and ambitious and unafraid. I choose you, I said, the words feeling like both a surrender and a reclamation. I choose your help. But Carlos, I need you to promise me something. What? Promise that when this is over, when Marcus is dealt with and the divorce is final, you'll let me leave if I want to. That this protection doesn't come with strings that bind me to you forever. Something flickered in his eyes, too quick to identify. Pain, perhaps, or disappointment. But he nodded. I promise. When this is over, you're free to go. I won't stop you, won't follow you, won't try to keep you. His grip on my hand tightened fractionally. But I'm also not going to pretend I won't try to convince you to stay. It was more than I'd hoped for, that promise of freedom even as he made his intentions clear. Marcus had never given me choices, only ultimatums disguised as love. Carlos was offering me both protection and autonomy, and that made all the difference. Okay, I said. Then let's figure out how to end this. The next 3 days passed in a strange limbo. I went to work with Carlos each morning, maintaining the professional distance we'd always had in the office, while everyone speculated about why I'd started arriving and leaving with him. At night, we returned to the penthouse, where Teresa would have dinner waiting, and we'd sit across from each other at his dining table, talking about everything and nothing. Carlos told me about his mother, how she'd raised him alone after his father died when he was 12, how she'd worked 3 jobs to keep him in private school, while also teaching him the family business that his father had left behind. He told me about taking over at 25, too young and too angry, making mistakes that had cost people their lives before he'd learned the value of patience and strategy. I told him about growing up in Queens, about my father who'd been a high school teacher, and my mother who'd run a small bakery, both of them gone now in a car accident that had happened while I was in college. I told him about my sister Elena, who was 5 years older and had practically raised me after our parents died, who'd taken me in without question when I'd shown up on her doorstep fleeing Marcus. We didn't talk about Marcus directly, though his presence hung between us like a shadow. Vincent provided daily updates on his movements, his meetings, his increasingly desperate attempts to contact me. The hearing was tomorrow, and I still hadn't decided what I wanted beyond the divorce itself. You need to eat something, Carlos said, drawing my attention back to the present. We were in his penthouse, the city lights twinkling 42 stories below us, and I'd been pushing food around my plate for the past 15 minutes without actually consuming any of it. I'm not hungry. You're nervous. He set down his fork, his dark eyes studying me with that unnerving intensity. Talk to me, Diana. What are you afraid of? That Marcus will show up tomorrow, that he'll make a scene, or worse, that he'll be calm and reasonable and make me look like I'm overreacting, that the judge will believe him when he says I'm being vindictive, trying to punish him for some imagined slight. The words tumbled out in a rush. That I'll walk out of that courtroom still tied to him. That won't happen. You can't know that. I can. Carlos rose from his chair, moving around the table to where I sat. He crouched beside me, bringing himself to eye level. Because I've already made certain it won't. Ethan will present evidence tomorrow of Marcus's stalking, his harassment, his meetings with Leo Santoro. The judge will have no choice but to grant the divorce with prejudice, which means Marcus gets nothing. No alimony, no share of your assets or income. Nothing. I stared at him. How do you know what Ethan has? Because I gave it to him. Carlos's expression was unapologetic. Vincent's surveillance footage, financial records showing Marcus's girlfriend, cell phone logs proving he's violated the restraining order multiple times. Everything Ethan needs to bury Marcus's claims. You went behind my back. The betrayal stung, even though logically I knew he was helping. You took control without asking me. I did what was necessary to protect you. His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. And before you spiral into thinking I'm just like Marcus, understand the difference. Marcus controlled you to keep you weak, dependent on him. I'm taking action to make you strong, to give you the ammunition to walk away from him forever. Can you see the distinction? Could I? The line felt blurry, especially when my instinct was to recoil from anyone making decisions for me. But Carlos was right about one thing. His actions gave me power, not took it away. Marcus had always worked to undermine my confidence, to make me doubt my perceptions. Carlos was handing me evidence, facts, irrefutable proof that I wasn't crazy or overreacting. I see it, I admitted quietly. But Carlos, you need to let me make my own choices moving forward. I appreciate the help, I do. But I need to feel like I have some control over my own life. Done. He said it without hesitation. From now on, I consult you before taking action. But Diana, I need something from you in return. What? I need you to stop hiding from what's developing between us. His voice dropped lower, intimate in the dimly lit dining room. We've been dancing around it for days now, pretending that sharing a home is purely practical, that having dinner together every night is just convenience. But we both know that's not true. My breath caught. Carlos, you feel it too. This pull between us. The way the air changes when we're alone together. The way you lean toward me without realizing it. The way I find excuses to touch you. His thumb traced along my jaw. I'm not Marcus, Diana. I'm not going to force anything you don't want. But I'm also not going to pretend I don't want you. That I haven't wanted you since the moment you walked into my office 6 months ago with your resume and your sharp mind and your refusal to be intimidated. I was terrified of you, I confessed. I still am, sometimes. Good. His smile was sharp. I'm a dangerous man, Diana. Being afraid of me shows intelligence, but being afraid doesn't have to mean running. Sometimes it means standing your ground and seeing what happens. And what happens if I stand my ground? Then I court you properly. Dinner, conversation, getting to know each other without the crisis of your divorce hanging over us. I show you that my world isn't just darkness and violence, that there's beauty in it too. And eventually, when you're ready, when you trust me enough, I make you mine in every way that matters. The possessiveness in those words should have sent me running. Instead, it sent heat pooling low in my stomach, a wanting I hadn't let myself feel in years. Marcus had taken sex, demanded it, used it as another form of control. The thought of Carlos wanting me, of choosing to wait until I was ready, was intoxicating. I'm not ready, I whispered. Not yet. There's too much happening, too much I need to process. I know. He pressed a kiss to my forehead, gentle and chaste. Which is why I'm not pushing. But I wanted you to know where I stand, what I want. So there are no surprises, no hidden agendas. Clear? Clear. He rose, offering me his hand. Come on. I want to show you something. I let him lead me through the penthouse to a room I hadn't entered yet, one of the few doors that had remained closed during my stay. When he opened it, I understood why he'd kept it private. It was an office, but unlike the sterile perfection of his workspace at Benedetti Tower, this room was warm, lived in, with bookshelves lining the walls and a leather chair positioned near the window. A desk held a sleek laptop and several framed photographs. Carlos with his mother, Carlos with a group of men I didn't recognize, Carlos shaking hands with someone who looked vaguely familiar. "This is where I actually work when I'm home," he explained. "The office downstairs is for show, for meetings with people I don't trust in my private space. This is real." "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I want you to understand what I'm offering. Not just protection from Marcus, not just a job or a place to stay. I'm offering you access to my real life, Diana. The parts of me I don't show anyone." He moved to the bookshelves, running his fingers along the spines. "I want you to know me, not just the version of Carlos Benedetti everyone else sees." I moved deeper into the room, drawn by the photographs. In one, a young Carlos stood beside a distinguished older man, both of them in front of what looked like a restaurant. "Your father?" "My uncle, actually. He took over the family business when my father died, held it for me until I was old enough to claim it. He died 5 years ago, same week as my mother. Heart attack." Carlos's voice was carefully neutral, but I heard the pain beneath it. "They were all I had left of my blood family." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. They lived well, died quickly. That's all anyone can ask for in this life." He turned to face me fully. "But it means I understand what it's like to be alone, Diana. To build a family from loyalty rather than blood. Teresa, Vincent, Marco, they're my family now. And I'm offering you a place in it, if you want it." "Why?" The question I kept asking because I still couldn't understand his interest in me. "What do you see in me that makes you want this?" Strength disguised as vulnerability. Intelligence masked by humility. A woman who revised a multi-million-dollar contract because it was the right thing to do, even though she could have been fired for it. He crossed to me, his hands settling on my waist. "I see someone who survived 3 years with Marcus Caruso and came out the other side, determined to rebuild her life. That's not weakness, Diana. That's steel wrapped in silk." His phone buzzed before I could respond, the sharp sound cutting through the intimate moment. Carlos frowned, checking the screen. "It's Vincent. I need to take this." He lifted the phone to his ear, his expression darkening as he listened to whatever Vincent was saying. "When? How many? All right. I'm on my way." "What's wrong?" "Marcus is at your sister's apartment, with 3 of his cousins from the Caruso family." Carlos was already moving, grabbing a jacket from the back of his desk chair. "Vincent says Elena called the police, but they're not leaving. I need to handle this before it escalates." Fear spiked through me. "Elena, I'm coming with you." "No." "Carlos, she's my sister. If Marcus is threatening her because of me, which is exactly why you're staying here." His voice was hard, brooking no argument. "I'm not walking you into a potential hostage situation. Vincent has men on site keeping watch, and I'm bringing Marco and Antonio with me. We'll get Elena out safely and deal with Marcus. But you stay here where I know you're protected. Understood?" I wanted to argue, to insist that I had a right to protect my own sister. But the cold calculation in Carlos's eyes reminded me that this was his world, his expertise. I would only be a liability in a confrontation with Marcus and his family. "Bring her back here," I said instead. "Elena, bring her here where she'll be safe." "Already planned on it." He pressed a hard, possessive kiss to my lips. "Stay inside. Teresa has instructions not to let you leave for any reason. I'll call when it's handled." Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a finality that made my chest tight with worry. I stood in his office, surrounded by the pieces of his real life, and realized with startling clarity that I'd stopped thinking of this as temporary. Somewhere in the past few days, Carlos's penthouse had started to feel like home, and that terrified me more than anything Marcus could do. The 2 hours Carlos was gone were the longest of my life. I paced his office, then the living room, then back to the office, my phone clutched in my hand, though I knew he'd call the moment there was news. Teresa tried to get me to eat something, but my stomach was twisted in knots of fear and guilt. Elena was in danger because of me, because I'd run to her when I'd left Marcus, because I'd tied her to my escape. When the elevator finally chimed, I practically ran to the foyer. Carlos emerged first, his expression grim but controlled. Behind him came Marco and Vincent, supporting Elena between them. My sister looked pale and shaken, a bruise already forming on her left cheekbone. "Oh my God, Elena." I rushed to her, but Carlos caught my arm. "She's all right, bruised but safe. One of Marcus's cousins got rough when she tried to call the police." His jaw was tight with barely suppressed rage. "Teresa, can you prepare the second guest room? And bring ice for Ms. Hernandez's face." "Already done, Mr. Benedetti." I helped Elena to the couch, while Carlos dismissed Marco and Vincent with quiet instructions I couldn't hear. When they left, he locked the elevator with a key card, an extra security measure that made the severity of the situation sink in further. "I'm so sorry," I said to Elena, tears streaming down my face as I held her hands. "This is all my fault. I should never have—" "Stop." Elena squeezed my hands, her grip surprisingly strong. "This is Marcus's fault, not yours. He showed up demanding to know where you were, saying you'd stolen something that belonged to him. When I told him to leave, he said he'd make sure everyone you cared about paid the price for your betrayal." "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. I told him I hadn't seen you in weeks, that I had no idea where you were staying." Elena glanced at Carlos, who had moved to pour himself a drink from the bar. "Then your boss showed up with what looked like half the Italian army, and suddenly Marcus couldn't leave fast enough." I looked at Carlos, who met my gaze steadily over the rim of his glass. "What did you do?" I explained to Marcus Caruso that his presence was unwelcome, that any further harassment of you or your family would be met with consequences that would extend beyond him to everyone he cares about. Carlos's voice was level, almost casual, but I heard the steel beneath it. "I also made it clear that you are under my protection, which means any threat to you is a threat to me, and people don't threaten me and walk away unscathed. Carlos, the Carusos are aware that I could dismantle their operations before breakfast if I chose to." He set down his glass. "I had a conversation with Antonio Caruso while Marco dealt with Marcus. The old man was surprisingly understanding once I explained the situation. It seems Marcus has been an embarrassment to the family for some time now. His father is tired of cleaning up his messes." I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. "You talked to Marcus's father?" "I did. We came to an understanding. Marcus will sign the divorce papers tomorrow without contest, will give up any claim to your assets or income, and will cease all contact with you, your sister, and anyone else you care about. In exchange, I won't reveal certain financial irregularities in his business dealings that would interest the IRS. You blackmailed him. I motivated him." Carlos's smile was sharp. "There's a difference. And before you spiral into thinking I'm no better than Marcus, understand this. I did what was necessary to free you. Marcus was never going to let go willingly. He needed to be given a reason that mattered more than his pride." Elena squeezed my hand. "Diana, I know this is overwhelming, but Mr. Benedetti is right. Marcus isn't going to stop unless he's forced to, and from what I saw tonight, Mr. Benedetti is the only person Marcus actually fears." Teresa appeared with ice wrapped in a soft cloth. "For your face, dear. And I've prepared the guest room if you'd like to lie down." "Thank you." Elena took the ice, pressing it gently to her cheek. She looked at me, her expression serious. "We should talk, privately." I helped her to the guest room, acutely aware of Carlos's gaze following us. Once the door was closed, Elena sat on the bed and studied me with the same assessing look she'd used when I was 16 and came home from my first real date. "So," she said, "that's your boss?" "That's my boss. The one you've been insisting is just your boss, nothing more, very professional, Absolutely no feelings involved. I felt heat creep up my neck. Elena. Diana. That man just went to war with the Caruso family for you. He threatened Marcus in front of witnesses, blackmailed his father, and brought me here to keep me safe. That's not boss behavior. That's something else entirely. It's complicated. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks pretty simple. He's in love with you, and you're terrified to admit you feel the same way. Elena's voice softened. Honey, I saw how you looked when he walked in. That's not gratitude or professional respect. That's something much deeper. I just left Marcus. I can't jump into another relationship. Carlos Benedetti is not Marcus Caruso. Elena's voice was firm. Marcus made you small, afraid, dependent. In the 5 minutes I've known your boss, I can see he does the opposite. He respects you, he trusts you, and most importantly, he gives you choices instead of ultimatums. How can you know that after 5 minutes? Because he could have brought me here without asking you. Instead, he called from the car to tell you what happened and ask if you wanted me here. Teresa told me while she was preparing the room. Elena reached for my hand. Diana, I know you're scared. After Marcus, I'd be shocked if you weren't. But don't let that fear keep you from something real, just because it feels too good to be true. A knock interrupted us. Carlos's voice came through the door. Diana, Ethan is on the phone. He needs to speak with you about tomorrow. I squeezed Elena's hand and went back to the living room. Carlos handed me his phone, his expression unreadable. Diana? Ethan's voice was urgent. I just got a call from Marcus's lawyer. They want to settle. No contest divorce. Marcus waives all claims. You keep everything. They're sending the papers over tonight for signing. My legs went weak. Just like that? Just like that. Diana, I don't know what happened, but whatever leverage you found, it worked. You'll be divorced by the end of the week. Thank you, Ethan, for everything. Thank whoever actually convinced Marcus to back down, because that wasn't your doing. He paused. Are you safe? Your sister said you're staying with a friend, but after tonight, I'm safe, I promise. I'll call you tomorrow to arrange signing the papers. I ended the call and handed Carlos his phone, unable to find words for the tumult of emotions crashing through me. Relief, gratitude, fear, and something else. Something that felt dangerously like hope. You did it, I whispered. You actually did it. I told you I would. He closed the distance between us, his hands settling on my waist. You're free now, Diana. Marcus can't touch you, can't threaten you, can't control you. How does it feel? Terrifying. The honest answer surprised me. I've spent 3 years being afraid of him, letting that fear dictate my choices. Now that it's gone, I don't know what to do with the space it left behind. You fill it with something better. Carlos's voice was low, intimate. You fill it with choices you make because you want to, not because you're afraid of the consequences. You fill it with people who value you for who you are, not who they want you to be. You fill it with a life that's yours. What if I want to fill it with you? The words were out before I could stop them, raw and honest and terrifying. Carlos went very still, his dark eyes searching mine. Diana, if you're saying this because you feel grateful, I'm saying it because it's true. I placed my hands over his where they rested on my waist. I'm saying it because I'm tired of being afraid, tired of running from things that feel good just because I'm scared they might hurt me. I'm saying it because every night for the past week, I've fallen asleep wishing you were in the room with me instead of down the hall. You're vulnerable right now. You've just been through trauma. I don't want to take advantage. You're not. I stepped closer, eliminating the space between us. You're giving me a choice, just like Elena said. I'm choosing you, Carlos. I'm choosing this, whatever it is between us. I'm choosing to stop running. His control shattered. His mouth claimed mine in a kiss that was nothing like the chaste press of lips we'd shared before. This was heat and hunger and barely restrained desperation, his hands tangling in my hair as he angled my head for better access. I melted into him, my body recognizing what my mind had been slow to accept, that I wanted this man with an intensity that bordered on madness. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Carlos rested his forehead against mine. "This changes everything," he said. "If we do this, if we cross this line, I won't be able to let you go. You need to understand that about me, Diana. I'm possessive, territorial. Once you're mine, you're mine. Not in the way Marcus claimed you, but in a way that's just as absolute. Can you handle that?" "I don't know," I answered honestly, "but I want to find out." "Then we do this right. I court you properly. Dates, conversation, building trust. No rushing, no pressure. When we finally come together, it'll be because you're certain, not because you're caught up in the moment." How very old-fashioned of you. I'm an old-fashioned man in many ways. His smile was wicked. But when I finally make you mine, Diana, there'll be nothing old-fashioned about it. That's a promise. The heat in his voice sent shivers down my spine. I'd thought I knew desire, had experienced it in those early days with Marcus before control replaced passion. But what I felt with Carlos was something else entirely. Wanting mixed with trust, passion tempered by respect. "I should let you get some rest," Carlos said, though he made no move to step away. "Tomorrow's going to be a long day, signing papers, dealing with lawyers, but after that, you're free. We're free to figure out what this is without Marcus hanging over us." "Will you stay with me?" The request slipped out before I could question it. "Just to sleep. I don't want to be alone tonight." Something softened in his expression. "Let me check on Elena, make sure she has everything she needs. Then I'll come to your room. But Diana, if I sleep beside you, I'm holding you. That's non-negotiable." "I'm counting on it." True to his word, Carlos came to my room an hour later, after Elena had settled in and Teresa had gone to her own quarters. He wore simple black sleep pants and a t-shirt, the most casual I'd ever seen him, and somehow it made him more attractive, more real, more human. "Come here," he said, already pulling back the covers on the bed. I climbed in, and he followed, immediately pulling me against his chest so my back pressed to his front. His arm wrapped around my waist, secure and warm, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt completely safe. "Sleep," he murmured against my hair. "I've got you." And I did, falling into a dreamless sleep that left me feeling more rested than I had in months. Morning came with sunlight streaming through the windows, and Carlos's warmth still surrounding me. Sometime during the night, we'd shifted so my head rested on his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear. I could have stayed like that forever, suspended in this moment before reality intruded. "I can feel you thinking," Carlos said, his voice rough with sleep. "Stop it. We have to go sign papers today. We do, but not for another 3 hours. We have time." His hand stroked down my spine, soothing rather than seductive. "How are you feeling?" "Nervous, relieved, terrified that something will go wrong at the last minute." "Nothing will go wrong. I'll make certain of it." He pressed a kiss to the top of my head. "But we should get moving. Ethan wants you at his office by 10, and I need to stop by the tower first to handle some business." The morning passed in a blur of activity. Elena was feeling better, the bruise on her face less angry in the daylight. She'd agreed to stay at the penthouse for a few more days, just to be safe, and Teresa had already taken her under her wing with maternal efficiency. Carlos dropped me at Ethan's office at exactly 9:55 a.m., with Marco stationed in the lobby and Vincent somewhere I couldn't see but knew was watching. The protection felt excessive until Ethan led me into the conference room, and I saw who was waiting. Marcus sat on one side of the long table, his lawyer beside him. He looked older than I remembered, stress aging him in the months since I'd seen him last. When his eyes met mine, I saw rage there, barely contained, and something else that looked like fear. Ms. Hernandez, his lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Chen, gestured to the chair across from them. "We're ready to proceed whenever you are." I sat, my hands folded calmly on the table, despite the way my heart hammered. Ethan took the seat beside me, already arranging documents with practiced efficiency. "Before we begin," Marcus said, his voice tight, "I want to speak with my wife. Alone." "Ex-wife," I corrected. "And no, anything you have to say, you can say in front of our lawyers." "Diana, please. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking." "The answer is no, Marcus." His jaw clenched, and I saw his hands curl into fists beneath the table. Patricia placed a restraining hand on his arm, a subtle reminder to maintain control. "Then let me say this publicly." Marcus leaned forward, his eyes locked on mine. "You think you've won, running to Carlos Benedetti, getting him to threaten my family. But you have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. Benedetti's world is darker than anything you experienced with me. He'll destroy you, Diana. He destroys everything he touches." "Is there a point to this?" Ethan asked mildly. "Because if you're trying to intimidate my client, it's not working." "The point," Marcus said, his voice rising, "is that she's making a mistake. I loved her. I wanted to protect her. Benedetti just wants to own her, to add her to his collection of assets. He'll use her up and throw her away when he's done." "That's rich," I said, surprised by the steadiness of my voice. Coming from the man who spent 3 years isolating me from everyone I loved, controlling every aspect of my life, making me believe I was lucky he tolerated me. "You don't know the first thing about love, Marcus. And you certainly don't know anything about Carlos. I know he's a criminal. I know he's dangerous. I know—" "You know nothing." I leaned forward, matching his intensity. "But let me tell you what I know. I know that Carlos has never once made me feel small or worthless. I know he trusts me to make my own decisions, and respects those decisions even when he disagrees. I know he protected my sister when you tried to terrorize her, and he did it without asking for anything in return. So if you're trying to save me from him, you can stop. The only person I needed saving from was you." Silence fell over the room. Marcus's face had gone pale, then flushed with anger. Patricia cleared her throat. "I think we should proceed with the signing," she said firmly. "Mr. Caruso has agreed to all terms as outlined in the settlement. Ms. Hernandez retains all personal assets. There's no alimony, and both parties agree to no contact going forward." "Fine." Marcus grabbed the pen Patricia offered, scrawling his signature across the documents with violent force. "But Diana, when this blows up in your face, when Benedetti shows his true colors, don't come crying to me. You made your choice." "I did," I agreed, taking the pen and adding my own signature with far more care. "I chose freedom. I chose myself. And yes, I chose Carlos. But that's my decision to make, not yours to judge." I signed the last page, and it was done. 3 years of marriage dissolved in a series of signatures. Ethan gathered the documents, his expression professionally neutral, but I caught the small smile of satisfaction he tried to hide. "We're finished here," he said. "Ms. Hernandez, if you'll step outside, I'll have these filed with the court this afternoon. You should have your final decree within 2 weeks." I stood, eager to leave, but Marcus's voice stopped me. "You'll regret this, Diana. Mark my words." I turned back to face him one last time. "The only thing I regret is not leaving you sooner. Goodbye, Marcus. Outside the conference room, my legs finally gave out. I sagged against the wall, adrenaline leaving my system in a rush that left me shaky and lightheaded. Marco was there immediately, his hand steadying my elbow. "Are you all right, Ms. Hernandez?" "I'm free," I whispered, and then louder, with growing conviction. "I'm free." Carlos was waiting in the lobby, his presence commanding attention even in the crowded space. The moment he saw me, he crossed to where I stood, his hands framing my face with that possessive gentleness I'd come to crave. "It's done. It's done." I couldn't stop the smile that spread across my face. "I'm divorced. Officially, completely divorced." "Then let's go celebrate." He took my hand, lacing his fingers through mine. "I'm taking you somewhere." "Where?" "Trust me." The somewhere turned out to be a small Italian restaurant in Little Italy, the kind of place that looked unremarkable from the outside, but whose interior was warm and welcoming, filled with the scent of fresh pasta and garlic. The owner greeted Carlos like family, embracing him and kissing both cheeks before turning to me with a speculative gleam in his eye. "And who is this beautiful woman you bring to my restaurant, Carlos?" "This is Diana," Carlos said, his arm sliding around my waist. "Diana, meet Giovanni. His family has owned this place for 3 generations and he makes the best carbonara in the city." "Any friend of Carlos is family here," Giovanni declared, leading us to a private table in the back. "I'll bring you the good wine." "Yes?" "The one we save for special occasions." Over pasta and wine, Carlos told me stories about his childhood, about learning to cook from his mother in their tiny apartment, about the first time his uncle had brought him to this very restaurant and taught him the difference between good pasta and great pasta. I told him about my dreams of writing, about the novel I'd started and abandoned a dozen times, about wanting to create something that mattered. "Then write," Carlos said simply. "You don't need my permission or anyone else's. If you want to write, write. I'll support you however you need." "Just like that?" "Just like that. Diana, I'm not interested in making you into someone you're not. I'm interested in giving you the freedom to become whoever you want to be." He reached across the table, taking my hand. "I know this is fast. I know we're still figuring out what we are to each other. But I need you to understand something. When I said you were mine, I didn't mean I owned you. I meant you were important to me, worth protecting, worth investing in. The difference matters." "I know," I said softly. "I'm starting to understand that." "Good, because I have a proposition for you." "Should I be worried?" "Maybe." His smile was wicked. "I want you to move into the penthouse permanently. Not as my employee, though you're welcome to keep working for me if you want. Not as my girlfriend, though I hope eventually we'll get there. But as my partner. Someone I build things with. Someone who challenges me and pushes back when I'm being an arrogant bastard." "That's a lot to ask." "I know. Which is why I'm asking, not telling." "You can say no, Diana. You can walk away today. Go back to your sisters. Rebuild your life completely separate from mine. I'll respect that choice. But I'm hoping you won't." I thought about the past weeks, about how Carlos had protected me without smothering me, respected me while still being honest about what he wanted. I thought about the way Elena had looked at him, the trust in her eyes when he'd promised to keep us safe. I thought about Marcus and the prison he'd built around me, and how different it felt to be with someone who wanted to set me free. "Yes," I said. "I'll move in. But Carlos, I need you to promise me something." "Anything." "Promise that you'll always give me choices, that you'll never decide my future without consulting me, never take away my agency even if you think you're protecting me. Promise that we'll be partners, equals, not master and possession." "I promise." He raised my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles. Equal partners. In business, in life, in everything that matters. Does that satisfy you? It's a start. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. Now tell me more about this writing support you mentioned, because I have about 6 months of ideas backed up and I'm going to need an office. His laugh was warm and genuine. Already ahead of you, there's a room in the penthouse that gets perfect morning light. I thought we could convert it into a study for you. You've been planning this. I've been hoping for this. There's a difference. He squeezed my hand. Diana, I don't know what the future holds. My world is complicated and dangerous, and there will be challenges we can't predict. But I do know that whatever comes, I want you beside me. Not behind me, not in front of me as a shield, but beside me as an equal. Can you live with that? I thought about everything I'd survived, everything I'd overcome to get to this moment. I thought about the woman I'd been 3 years ago, confident and ambitious, and the woman I'd become under Marcus's control, small and afraid and desperate. And I thought about the woman I wanted to be, the one who was slowly emerging in Carlos's presence, strong, capable, choosing her own path. I can live with that, I said. In fact, I'm counting on it. We left the restaurant as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Carlos kept my hand in his as we walked, and for the first time in years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, wasn't scanning for threats, wasn't afraid. I was free, and I was choosing, every day, to build something new with a man who saw me not as property to possess, but as a partner to cherish. That was enough. That was everything.